said the bumblebee has such small wings that ordinarily those wings are not supposed to be able to carry the bumblebee. He said, but the bumblebee flies. Why does the bumblebee fly? The bumblebee doesn't know that he's not supposed to be able to fly.
Nobody told you. Self-discovery is such a huge thing that you want to be so intentional that I would advise that you have a notebook, your self-discovery / purpose notebook.
Small red car just double crossed us, just came across us, and I had to stop. The 4 doors opened and I saw machine guns.
Wow.
One of them at the back had a gun on my wife's neck. With a finger on the trigger. I jumped with all of my strength because I thought I was jumping to safety,
Yeah.
And while mid-air, what I would hear was, "Boah!" It shot me in the back.
Wow.
The surgeon said to me, "Oga, you're very lucky. The bullet missed your heart by 1 inch."
Wow.
I just said to myself, no, I cannot die now. I have not yet fulfilled my purpose in life. I went back to the office, to Microsoft, and resigned. If you do what you're wired for, what you're called to do, what is your purpose in life, you cannot fail.
Part of this discovery purpose has a lot to do with self-awareness.
True. I found out that to discover your purpose, there is one major thing you need to do.
Hello everyone, good day. I'm so excited to welcome you to the Connecting Deep podcast. My name is Myles Makafui and I'm your host. Today is a very exciting day. I mean, it's almost like having a baby or being pregnant for a long time and finally getting to deliver your baby. This is a baby that I have been carrying for a long time and I'm happy to offload today. Now, this podcast is targeted at young people. It's designed for young people who have limitations, are aware of those limitations, and they want to transcend those limitations. And so we're going to try to give you premium information. I'm going to try to bring you guests, who have the experience, who have walked a certain journey and can therefore give us very practical insights on how we can navigate our own journeys. I'm so excited. I'm really excited. So this is the first episode and I have Victor Diali with me. Victor is an amazing guy. I've known Victor for a couple of years now. We sort of roll in the same spaces. I've also worked with him, for his company, Talent Equip, and all of that. And Victor has a very unique story. And if I want to sort of sum up what this episode is really about purpose. And Victor has a unique story of how he was able to find clarity for his life. This is not just going to be a one-off. We're going to have a lot of discussions around purpose. And I think it's something that a lot of young people are trying to gain clarity around. We're going to have a lot of discussions around it. I'm so excited because I know it's going to give you a lot of insights that will help you on your own journey. Please subscribe if you're not yet subscribed to the channel. Turn on your notifications so that if we drop any video, you'll be notified, and comment, sort of engage with the channel. I'll be happy to interact with you in the comment section. Here goes our first episode. I hope you enjoy it. Hi everyone, good day wherever you're listening from. So you're welcome to the Connecting Deep podcast with Myles. I'm your host, Myles Makafui. And with me today, I have Mr. Victor Diali. Victor, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, and so this is the first episode of this podcast. I'm very excited to, bring you this podcast out of our studio. This has been a long time coming. I look forward to today's episode. The Connecting Deep podcast is really for young Africans, young people across the world actually, but maybe primarily for young people from sub-Saharan Africa, people who grew up in environments like I grew up in, okay? When you grow up around here, you find out that there are many limitations. Sometimes it's the quality of education, sometimes it's just the environments that, you grew up in. And if you are not aware of those limitations and you're not intentional about transcending those limitations, you might just go on a wrong trajectory. So this podcast is for young people who are aware of their limitations and want to do something about their limitations. We're going to be giving you actionable insights. We're going to be sharing powerful stories that you'll be able to draw wisdom from and, just practical tools, tips that you can apply on your own journey. And I'm very excited. This is our first episode, and Victor is our first guest, and you're in for a ride. I can assure you're in for an amazing experience. Victor, you're welcome once again.
Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you.
Let me quickly introduce Victor. Victor is my Oga, first of all. So I remember I first met Victor years ago. I think it was maybe 2018 or 19. We met at City Mall in Lagos. We had Union Bank was about to go on this nationwide customer experience training program, and we had three organizations. There was IBFC Alliance, there was Education and HR School. So in the room, I remember we had people like Steve Harris Bankole. I remember Paul Fo was there. You know, it was just filled with very top-level consultants. You know, somehow I found myself there. Anyway, so over the years, I've worked with Victor. He runs a very fantastic consulting firm called Talent Equip. Great company, has done fantastic things. So Victor has been, first of all, he's a managerial psychologist. He's an excellent trainer facilitator. He's a leadership and team bonding expert. He's been a consultant for some of the biggest banks out of Africa. He's worked for, First Bank, consulted for UBA Union, MTN, PZ, 7-Up, Chi Limited, Cadbury, a number of federal ministries here in Nigeria, where we live. He's also done some consulting work for the University of Roehampton, UK, and he's worked for ExxonMobil, just to name a few. He's everywhere, okay? Yes, so Victor, it's amazing to have you once again. We're going to get right into it, and I really want everyone to pay very rapt attention. You don't want to miss it, because Victor has some very amazing stories. I think that he has lived a blessed life. God has been very good to him. Okay, so I'm very excited that we get to hear his story firsthand here. I don't know if you've been on any podcast to share your story.
Actually,
before.
This is the first podcast where I'm going to share this story.
Fantastic. So this is an exclusive, yeah.
Truly an exclusive.
You're getting this exclusive on the Connecting Deep podcast, all right? Yeah. So Victor, let's get into it. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your background? Yeah.
Well, thank you, Myles, and thank you for having me. It's really an exciting opportunity for me to share this story. Hopefully, someone will hear this and it will help them navigate their life. So just a little bit about myself. My name is Victor Diali. A lot of people now call me Victorious Victor. And that stems from one of the stories that I'm going to be sharing today.
Okay.
So I started my career as a banker. So I used to work for a bank called UBA. Went to UBA in 1996. Stayed there for about 2 years.
Wow.
I was an IT specialist. I read computer science and engineering. Like we say in Nigeria, jammed me, But then, I went to study computer science and engineering. Why? I don't know, and I think a lot of Nigerians will share that sentiment. My dad just came back one day. I was filling my jam form, and he just said, "Put computer there." He probably doesn't remember now. Right. He's 87 years old now. Wow. Shout out to Daddy. And so I left UBA in 1998, and I joined a company called NCR. I went to NCR as a Microsoft certified trainer. So I was one of the first 5 Microsoft certified trainers in West Africa.
Wow.
And there I started my training career. And how did I even get into that training career? One of my classmates, Obi Mba, I don't know where I think Obi Mba is in the US now. She left Nigeria many years ago. Obi Mba used to be my classmate, and she remembered that in school, in university, I went to ISUT, Enugu State University of Science and Tech. She remembered that I used to teach a lot. I used to teach them. So after the lecturer had finished teaching, my classmates would come to me and like, "Victor, we don't understand what that man was saying. Do you understand?" And I say, "Yes, I understand. Can I teach you?" And they say, "Yes." So I started teaching a lot of people. And Obi reminded me that, "Victor, you remember when we were in school, you used to teach a lot. Now there's an opportunity for you to be a trainer. We're looking for a trainer at NCR. would you come and join us? And interestingly, it wasn't a permanent job, it was a contract job. I left the permanent job at UBA
Wow.
to take a contract position.
Okay.
And that speaks to the fact that I saw that as something that was going to be part of my destiny. I was going to be doing something I loved. And so I went there. I stayed there for about 2 years. Then I joined a company called Compaq, the computer company. I stayed at Compaq for a couple of years. And in 2002, Compaq became HP.
Oh, yes.
If you remember, there was something like a merger, and Compaq became HP. So I moved out of training at that point and became a salesperson. So I became a sales specialist covering the imaging and printing products group at HP.
Okay.
Went to Morocco for some time, came back. After a couple of years, I moved into a sales channel management role.
Okay.
And then in 2008, I left HP to join Microsoft as sales distribution manager, covering 5 countries: Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and the Gambia.
Wow.
Interestingly,
Okay.
at Microsoft, Marius Monsoga, who was one of the people who certified me in Cote d'Ivoire as a Microsoft certified trainer, ended up being my manager at Microsoft.
Wow, that's interesting.
Very interesting. And until today, one of the best managers I've ever had. So at Microsoft, I stayed at Microsoft until 2009, 2010, when something interesting happened to me, which is one of the stories I'll be sharing today. I'm married and I live in Lagos.
Fantastic. Nice background.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, I'm very interested in your journey to self-discovery, because I know it's one thing, around here, I was saying to someone recently about how when I was outside the country schooling, and I would talk to my mates in Nigeria, and I would ask them, what are you studying? And they would respond and say, they gave me this. And there was just this sense of helplessness. Like, you could sense it that for some people, from that point on, psychologically, they're going on a path that they are not intentional about.
Correct.
It's almost, so there's this Ghanaian music group called Osibisa from the 80s and the 70s. You remember Osibisa?
High Life.
Yes. So they have this particular song called Woyaya. It's a very popular song.
Okay.
And the words...
That sounds like a Woyaya in Lagos.
It sounds like a Woyaya. But I think in Ghanaian language, in Ghana particularly, Woyaya means we're going, we're on a journey, something like that.
Okay.
And the words of the song literally say, we are going, heaven knows where we are going.
Wow.
But we'll get there.
Let's just keep going.
Let's just keep going. And it's a typical song that, is reflective of our society.
It does.
Where loads of people are on journeys, and sometimes those journeys might look good. You were working in, you had very good jobs.
Nice companies.
But it's one thing to have a great career. It's another thing to be in the center of your purpose, to have clarity about what it is you should be doing.
True.
And discover yourself, and therefore, make the most of your life.
Yes.
So what was your journey? How did you gain clarity about purpose? What was your journey to self-discovery? How did that start?
So for many years while I was working with these companies, I didn't have a sense of fulfillment. Sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and really not feel like going to work.
Okay.
Because for me, I just felt like, I wasn't living a life of meaning. Okay. It was more like, wake up, eat, go to work, come back, sleep, wake up, and the cycle just continued. And I just felt there was more to life than that. I felt there was more to my life than that. I just felt there had to be something more. There had to be a greater meaning. And so I started to ask myself questions. Why are you here? What are you supposed to be doing? What is life all about? And so unconsciously, I was going through this self-discovery phase.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll go to the beach and I'll just sit down, I'll look into the water, just look at the waves And I'm asking myself, God, why did you make me?
So even though you were living some sort of privileged life,
Sort of.
you still had
An emptiness.
and you were still asking yourself these questions. Fantastic.
Correct. And that's why people who think that money will give them meaning make a very big mistake. Some people think that fame will give them meaning. They make a mistake. And that's why very wealthy people sometimes are not satisfied with their lives.
True.
Okay? There's more to life than that. There's more to life than money. There's more to life than work.
Paying bills.
There's more to life than paying bills. There's more to life than marriage. There's more to life than so many different things. And I found out that one of the most important things is to have a clear sense of purpose. I didn't have that. So I was asking questions. I would pray and I was just asking questions. I wasn't satisfied with my life. And so something interesting happened. In 2009, on November 22nd, I was driving to church with my wife then. We had no kids. And my nephew, Richard. And at some point, it was about 6:30 in the morning. We went around a bend, right? And there was this red small car, we call them kabu kabu in Nigeria. Small red car just double crossed us, just came across us. And I had to stop. The 4 doors opened and I saw machine guns.
Wow.
And they sprayed the bullets in the air. And I was like, wow. My wife really panicked, but I calmed her down. And I just stayed there in the car. They came to the driver's side. They opened the door and slapped me. I was looking at these boys, small boys, little boys. They slapped me. And that, first of all, I was disoriented. And honestly, you know those stars you see on Tom and Jerry, yeah?
Those cartoon stars.
Those stars are real.
Wow.
It's not cartoon. I saw those stars when they slapped me, and they put us in the back seat, took over the car, and started driving. And they were just going through corners. They were just driving, and one of them at the back had a gun on my wife's neck.
Whoa.
With a finger on the trigger. I was like, let this guy not just make a mistake and just press that trigger further. At some point, top speed, they opened the door and pushed my wife out. I was glad. I was like, okay, it's better than being in the car with a gun on your neck.
So this was top speed.
Top speed.
And they pushed her out of the car.
Pushed her out of the car. I was like, well, worst case, you have broken legs. Okay, that can be mended. And so they kept driving with me, and they started threatening me that if the car went off, was there any security in the car? And all that. I assured them.
Okay, that's why they still had you in the car, because they were worried.
They were worried that there might be some security in the car, and
so
the car would go off
at some point.
So they kept driving around and round and round and round. At this point, I had no idea where we were. Right?
Wow.
So they now got to some point when they were satisfied that the car would not go off. They got to some expressway at this time, and there was some bush. They stopped the car, opened the door, and asked me to jump into the bush. I jumped with all of my strength because I thought I was jumping to safety,
Yeah.
And while mid-air, what I would hear was, "Boah!" It shot me in the back.
Wow.
Bullet went into the left side of my back, came out left side of my chest.
Wow.
At the time I was getting treatment, the surgeon said to me, "Oga, you're very lucky. The bullet missed your heart by 1 inch."
Wow.
And he said, this one bullet would have killed you. It was at that point I knew that God had just saved me. And so when they shot me and I landed on the floor in the bush, of course they drove off. I thought the next thing I would see would be bright lights and angels singing, welcome home.
Interesting.
I didn't see bright lights.
Wow.
I didn't see angels. My brother, I saw grass and pure water. Sachet water, as pure water as we call it in Nigeria. I said, no, this has to be Nigeria. I'm still alive. I'm not dead. wow, I made it. I'm still alive. I was shocked that I was still alive. And then, I just said to myself, no, I cannot die now. I cannot die now. I have not yet fulfilled my purpose in life. At that point, I hadn't discovered my purpose. I was still sort of empty, but I knew there was something more.
So even in that moment
Yes.
where you were shot,
Yes.
you were lying in the bush on the floor,
In the pool of my own blood.
in the pool of your own blood, between life and death, really.
Yes.
You still thought about the fact that
Exactly.
you had not fulfilled your purpose. You had
Exactly.
not done anything about. Wow,
True.
that's
And
extraordinary.
that thought
Yeah.
is one of the things that kept me alive.
Wow.
Okay? Because I had that thought that, no, I cannot die now. I have not yet fulfilled my purpose in life. So I had the will to live. I was able to pull myself up, right? And I listened carefully. I saw my nephew. They had broken his head with the butt of the gun.
Wow.
And we started tracing the sounds we were hearing, and
Okay.
we got to an expressway. I stood in the middle of the express, clutching my chest because the blood was gushing out from my chest, my nose, my mouth,
Wow.
and my elbow. Bullet went through my elbow, and I was begging for help.
Wow.
Nobody was willing to help. No one was willing to help. Some of them would drive close to me, take a good look at me, change their gear, and zoom off.
And by the way, this was a Sunday morning, yeah?
This was a Sunday morning. People were going to church.
So those people were going to church.
Yeah, the church
That's
people.
quite
Church people, my
interesting.
brother. Church people.
That's quite interesting.
Maybe God brought church to them on the road. And my daughter, tells me that this was Good Samaritan story. Because
Yeah.
as people were zooming past, I kept saying to myself, so this is very important for young people to understand. The thoughts you have in your head will make a very big difference in your life.
Okay.
The thoughts I had in my head was, someone will stop for me. Someone will stop. I will not die. At a point, I felt I had about 5 minutes to live. I just kept saying to myself, someone will stop. I will not die. Someone will stop. I will not die. And one bus stopped, rickety bus, dirty. The driver that came out of that bus was smelling. Scrunchy. He came close to me and asked me, Kilo shele, meaning, what happened? I said, I'm robber. That's all I could say. I'm robber. And he said, Oma Sheo, meaning, what a pity.
Yeah.
He was going back to the bus to drive off. I knew that was my last chance. Something told me, Victor, this is your last chance. So as he got into the driver's seat, I opened the car and jumped into the passenger side in front. My nephew jumped into the back.
Okay.
And I told the guy, just drive. He was scared. I could die inside his bus, and then he'll be in trouble.
Yeah.
Nigerian factor,
Yeah.
right? So I kept encouraging him, keep driving. Don't worry, keep driving. I won't die. Just keep driving. We had no idea where we were going. We were just driving. And as we were going, after some time, we just saw a signboard, something Memorial Hospital. I just don't remember the name of the hospital.
Okay.
I wish I could trace them. I would go back there just to say thank you. It was a Memorial Hospital, and I remember now it was along Abeokuta Expressway.
Okay.
So if anyone knows the name of this hospital, please put it in the comment section.
Please do.
Please do. I'd like to visit them.
Yeah.
And so we drove into this hospital, screaming, and nurses just jumped out from inside the hospital, and they helped me, got me into the hospital, and guess what? There was no doctor on duty.
Wow.
No doctor on duty. And here was a gunshot victim, no doctor on duty. Hey, doctor had gone to church. And so these nurses, God bless nurses. If you're a nurse out there, God bless you. These nurses saved my life.
Wow.
And that's where I found, I saw the power of teamwork and how teamwork can make a difference.
Interesting.
These nurses worked as a perfect team. The matron was like the conductor of an orchestra. She would stretch her hand like this, she would get what she needs. She didn't have to say much. They were communicating without saying anything. And in my semi-conscious state, I could see how teamwork was working to save my life. And I heard her say, "Oh, guy, you're lucky. The bullet passed through. There's an entry wound, there's an exit wound." And so they were able to arrest the bleeding, they bandaged me and everything. And just as I was sleeping off, I just saw policemen walking into the hospital. In those days in Nigeria, if you treat a gunshot victim, you'll be arrested.
I remember that a lot of hospitals, I mean, for so many years, a lot of hospitals would reject gunshot victims.
But shortly before then, there had been an announcement that the hospital should go ahead and treat gunshot victims. And so I just saw these policemen walking in, and right behind them was my wife.
Oh, wow.
And that's how we got reunited.
Okay.
And then they moved me to Reddington Specialist Hospital here in Victoria Island, where we are. And after a couple of surgeries, and that's where the surgeon told me that the bullet missed your heart by 1 inch.
Wow.
And a couple of surgeries later, I was stabilized and got admitted in the hospital. And while I was at the hospital, I heard, because they didn't let people visit me.
Okay.
I heard that at the reception area, a lot of my colleagues, friends, proteges, so many of them were, they had camped out at the reception of the hospital, and people could hear them saying so many things. A lot of them were crying. "Oh, God, don't allow Victor to die. He did a lot in my life. He changed my life. He impacted my life." And when I got that feedback, that was like food to my soul. It told me that I was somehow living a life of impact.
Yeah, you're
right?
having some impact on them.
And that gave me a lot of fulfillment, that something about me was helping somebody else. And then I continued my self-discovery search.
Wow.
While in the hospital, I was thinking about my life. So when I get out of this hospital, what am I going to do? God, what's my purpose in life?
So you would say that this entire thing that essentially could have taken your life became a life-changing moment.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. It was a turning point for me. It was a turning point. At Clarity 4D, we call it a defining moment.
Yeah.
It was a defining moment for me. And that spurred me on to really think about why I existed. Because for me to have a second chance at life, not many people get a second chance at life.
True. Not many people. Honestly, not many people.
So I was really grateful to have this second chance at life, and I was going to make it count. And so I was thinking about it and all of that. And I remember watching a video by Les Brown.
Okay, the great Les Brown.
Yeah. It was titled "Live Full, Die Empty." I think it was on Seminars on DVD.
Okay.
Seminars on DVD. And one of the things I learned from that video was that it was important to have a life of purpose, to have a life of meaning, and that you don't always have to see the end of the journey before you start, right? You don't have to see the end of the journey before you start. If you're driving somewhere, you don't see your destination before you start. Most of the time, you start in faith.
And I think that's a very important idea for our audience to understand that, maybe one of the reasons we are still confused is because you want to see the entire picture.
Exactly.
You have an idea, there is some inclination of what to do, but you're waiting for the entire picture to be clear. And most of the time, the entire picture is not going to be clear.
True.
You would have to take some steps.
True.
Fantastic.
True.
So you had gone through this life-changing, experience, this defining experience, defining moment where you almost lost your life. Yeah. Now, before this happened, you started asking questions. There was an awareness. That there was far more to life.
Missing.
Yes, something was missing. There was far more to life than just, waking up, going to work, coming back, even though you were living a comfortable life.
Yeah.
But there was an awareness. True. And I think that's the foundation. So now, even when you were shot and you were on the floor, you were still thinking about purpose.
True.
Now, you got to the hospital, you got to Reddington, you had your surgeries, and you were still thinking about purpose.
True.
So now you've had your surgeries, you're fine, you're leaving the hospital. What next?
So I left the hospital, and before I left the hospital, I was asking, okay, so what exactly am I supposed to be doing? Okay, I thought about many different things, and I found out that to discover your purpose, there is one major thing you need to do. You need to find out what gives you the greatest fulfillment. What is it that even if you weren't being paid, you could do for the rest of your life? And that was a major key for me. And I remembered, out of all the things I do that I do quite well, I remember there was only one thing that gave me the greatest fulfillment, and it was teaching someone.
Wow.
It was teaching. I remembered in school, I would, during exams, others would be going all out to read and study for the exams. I would be going about teaching people.
Interesting.
And sometimes I would feel bad that, look, Victor, you went to school to read, not to teach people. But guess what? I'll get into the exam, and the results will come out, and I'm getting straight A's.
Wow.
I still remember one of my papers. Dr. Eric Makafui wrote on one of my papers, I looked for something to mark wrong and found none.
From the guy who wasn't reading but was teaching everybody else.
And every time I taught people, I would feel so happy. I would feel so fulfilled. And I said to myself, I think this is what I'm wired for. And so I went back to the office, to Microsoft, and resigned.
Wow, that's quite interesting. So at this time you're working in Microsoft, of course, before this incident.
Traveling all over the world.
I mean, that's a Fortune 500 company. Correct. And, anyone would feel privileged to work in a place like Microsoft. But you were so, you were so determined to live a life of purpose that you went back to Microsoft after all of this and decided, you know what, this has been great, but I think I want to be in the center of, my purpose. And so you resigned.
I left.
How did your family react to this?
My wife was not happy about it because she felt, look, how can you leave this good job? We don't have a house, you don't accomplish a lot of things. And I said to her, look, you know what, I've discovered something. If you do what you're wired for, what you're called to do, what is your purpose in life, you cannot fail. She said, why? I said, listen, birds don't fail flying test.
Wow.
Birds just fly.
True.
And when you see a bird in the skies, it's like they're enjoying bliss.
Yeah, it's effortless.
Effortless. They don't have to learn to fly. That's what they're wired to do. And I said, okay, look at fishes in the sea, in the river, in the water. When a fish is in water, the fish is at its best. At its best. In its element.
Effortless.
Fish cannot fail swimming test. They can't fail swimming test.
That's a profound insight right there. Profound insight.
Monkeys can't fail jumping test.
Climbing
test. They won't fail.
They can't fail.
Do you understand? It's wired into them. So one of the things that young people need to understand is to answer this question. What am I wired to do? And understanding that question means that we look back into ourselves. It's reverse engineering. We look back into ourselves. How did God make me? Why did God make me this way? Why do I have a voice like this? Why am I this tall? Why am I able to do this that I didn't learn from anywhere? There's a wiring.
So in other words, part of this discovery purpose has a lot to do with self-awareness.
True.
There has to be a lot of self-awareness.
It starts with self-awareness.
What are my strengths?
What are my strengths?
What are the things I do effortlessly? What are the... And I think this is it because, people hear this a lot, in different places. And I think that while it's very obvious to some people, it's not very so obvious to others.
Yes.
So are there things that people could do? Is it to maybe get feedback sometimes from your blind spots to ask people questions around you.
Yeah.
I think clearly one of the things that I get from you is that you have to be intentional, even about this discovery. You have to be very intentional.
Exactly.
You have to want it so bad that you are sitting down, you're doing introspection, you are reflecting.
True.
You're taking, you're doing an audit of your life.
True.
And checking different points to find out, when was I the happiest? Or when have I been the happiest? When have I felt the most fulfilled? What are the things that I put in little efforts and I get phenomenal results?
Well?
Yeah.
What am I best at? What is it? What is it that I do? And people say, like you said, sometimes you have to believe in what other people see in you.
Yes.
There's certain things you don't see in yourself.
Exactly.
So I work with another organization called Clarity 4D.
Yeah.
I'm Clarity 4D representative in West Africa.
Okay.
And at Clarity 4D, the 4D there means 4 dimensions. We believe in the 4 dimensions.
Yeah.
And this speaks to what we're saying. The first dimension is discover, and that is self-discovery.
Yeah.
What is it about me? We look inwards, we look at ourselves. The second D there is discuss. Discuss what? What do other people say about me?
Yeah.
Because what I see about myself is not the full story.
Yeah.
There are certain things we don't see in ourselves, but it's obvious to others.
Yeah.
There are patterns. We operate in patterns.
Yeah,
Some people see the patterns.
Yes. So I think one of the reasons, because I'm sure someone is at home wondering that, how can I not see things about myself? But
Exactly.
we are creatures of habits.
True.
And so when you display a consistent pattern of behavior, over time, those behavioral patterns are imprinted on your neural pathways. You don't have to consciously do it.
True.
So you might be displaying a certain behavior and not be aware.
You may not even be aware of it.
In fact, it might be something as simple as not knowing that you walk a certain way.
Thank you. And can I tell you something about walking a certain way?
Yeah.
One time, I was in Uyo with a group of other consultants, and we were doing a program for MTN. And before then, my wife had been telling me that I walked a certain way. And I would say, no, me, never. Me, walk like this, never. It's not possible. So we were having lunch, and then I forgot something in my room. I wanted to go and pick it up. So as I was walking back to the room, walking down the corridor, okay, I saw someone on the other side walking towards me. And the person was walking a certain way. And I was like, why is this person walking like this? Only for me to discover that what was at the end of the corridor was a big mirror. And the person walking towards me was me. When I realized that, I was like, was I the one walking like this? Oh my goodness. That's exactly what my wife had been telling
you.
So you may not know how you walk.
Yeah.
If there's something at the back of your head, it will take someone else behind you.
Yeah, to see it.
To tell you what's at the back of your head.
True.
Sometimes you have to believe in what other people see in you.
So you have to discuss.
And you have to discuss it. It's not an argument. You know what some people argue over it. No, this is not me. You don't know the real me.
So you have to be open-minded.
You have to be open-minded. It's not an argument. It's a discussion. It's a conversation.
Yeah.
For example, you asking them questions like, why do you see me this way? What do I do that gives you this impression? It could be it's a perception. That's how they perceive you. You might be doing something that makes them perceive you this way. If you have been coming late to meetings, it doesn't make you a late comer, but people might perceive you that way.
So in other words, I think that, and this is really for our audience that are listening to us here, I think that self-discovery is such a huge thing that you want to be so intentional that I would even advise that you have a new notebook.
Yeah.
Write everything. Sit down, do a life audit. Try to look at, you might even go as far as asking your parents, if they're still alive, that about questions about your childhood.
True. Yeah.
You might find things there that sort of align with, some of the things you've noticed.
Yeah.
So you want to get as much information from the people that have been closest to you for most of your life.
Yeah.
You want to write everything down, every single information. So I would advise that you have a notebook, your self-discovery / purpose notebook.
Yeah.
Write as much as you can, everything you find out. I think that when everything is written out and you begin to go through it, you would find meaning somewhere.
And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had a notebook. I was writing these things down.
Interesting.
In fact, I was drawing things like mind maps.
Wow.
Okay, and that's a nice tool that you can use. Learn how to do, think with mind maps.
Yes.
That helps you to put things in perspective, and you can see everything on paper.
Yeah.
I was writing these things down. At a point, I had about 7 things I had written that I knew how to do well, that I was good at, I liked and all of that. And then I decided to rank all of them. I said to myself, okay, out of all these 8 things, which is the very one that gives me the greatest fulfillment that I could do for the rest of my life, even if I wasn't being paid.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, money can derail you, because some people feel that everything they do they have to put money first. You don't have to put money first.
So I think, and I used to say this a lot, that in a society where there's a lot of lack and deprivation, money becomes overrated.
Exactly.
So money takes on a sense of importance that it shouldn't take. And it's just a function of the lack that we are experiencing. But this is very important, everything Victor is saying, because I know that when we have maybe emotional intelligence classes and maybe we're doing the Johari window, the Johari window is a nice self-discovery tool. I usually like to give my participants an assignment or a classwork where I ask them to actually write their strengths. I tell them to write 10 strengths. Now, it's very intentional. I ask for 10, knowing that some people will struggle to even get 3.
Yeah.
There are people that are totally clueless, And so at some point I tell them, you know what, it's okay to phone a friend. You can call your spouse, you can call your friend. And right there in the class, people begin to call friends, family members, and they begin to tell them things like, me?
That's interesting. That's
I do this, and then they write it down. And it's always very enlightening for them. And you find out that, you see, if you're not that intentional, you can just be in this cycle of going to work and coming back.
Absolutely.
You understand? If you don't sit down, take out some time, do a life audit. Take out, when you're on leave, we live in a culture where some people will not mind to be paid, to continue working. Or be on leave, and you don't spend quality time being in touch with yourself.
Yeah.
And finding out what's really going on with me, I think it's one of those great Greek philosophers, I've forgotten now, that said that a life unexamined is not worth living. So you want to, from time to time, have those moments where you sit with yourself and you examine your life and you ask yourself these tough questions, and what you think you do not know, ask others.
Ask others. There's nothing wrong in asking others.
Asking others.
In Nigeria and maybe other parts of Africa, we feel that asking someone something means you're not intelligent. Or you're no, it's okay to ask others.
Okay.
The knowledge, we live in a human network. Knowledge exists in other people. We connect to them to get the knowledge. So that was the second dimension, which is discuss. The third dimension is diversify. Diversify into your hidden potential. And that's another thing. People have hidden potential.
True.
Potential they don't know exists. Things that sometimes they feel are weaknesses. So I don't believe in weaknesses. I believe more that what people call weaknesses are potential. For example, the fact that I find it difficult to write with my left does not make it a weakness. It's potential. It's an area that has not been attended to. And that's the only reason why they let their hand is weak.
So it's an improvement area.
It's an improvement area. It's an area that tells me, look, if you want to get better, see me,
Yeah.
do something about me.
So, but we call it the weak hand.
We call it the weak hand. But who says it's the weak
The weak
hand?
hand.
There are certain things in your life,
Yeah.
I bet you,
Yeah.
you would rather use your left. If you're right-handed, there are certain things that the weak hand is better than, the so-called weak hand is better than with your other hand. So there's no such thing as weaknesses. Let me tell you what weaknesses are. A weakness could be an understated strength. A weakness could be an unattended strength.
True.
A weakness could be an overused strength. If you have a strength and you overuse it, so it's a perception. People will perceive it as a strength. If you're very good at comedy, you crack a lot of jokes.
Yeah.
If you go to a place where you're not supposed to crack jokes, like a funeral, and that's where you want to show your strength, it'll be perceived as a weakness. If you're in a meeting where you're supposed to speak, and you decide to be quiet, it will be perceived as a weakness. So it's really an overused strength, underused strength, misplaced strength, unattended to air. No such thing as a weakness. So that's all potential.
Untapped potential.
Untapped potential.
Okay, so that's the third D, diversify.
That's the third D, diversify. Okay. And the last D is develop. Develop into your full potential over time. And guess what? I tell people, I ask people, when will you be at your best? You will never be at your best until you die. Because every second that you live is an opportunity to be better than your best.
Fantastic. You know what? I've been saying this for a while now, and sometimes people don't understand. I've been saying that perfection, the word perfection, is a myth. It does not exist. And that's because in reality, excellence is progressive.
True.
So what you think is the best today is going to become normal tomorrow.
Thank you.
You know, I remember growing up, I've always been a sports athletics person. And one of the, my childhood heroes was Michael Johnson.
Okay.
The American sprinter. Yeah. Michael Johnson ran the 200 and 400 meters and he was exceptional. There was something about the way he ran. He looked effortless. Everything we've been saying. And he had, at some point, I think he had the world record, for the 200 meters, the 400 meters. And you just thought that, no, this is the best. This is the greatest ever. Nobody could be better, Yeah. And then, for the 200 meters, Usain Bolt came along.
True.
And, just blew that record. Yeah. So even when you think that, this is the best, you see, that thing, perfection of being the best, doesn't really exist. It's a myth.
It's a mirage.
Because excellence is progressive. You would always find that there's room for improvement, and that room is endless. It's boundless. It's really about how much we are willing to apply ourselves. To whatever it is that we're doing.
True. And talking about progressiveness. Young people need to understand, because a lot of people talk about success and they want to achieve success and they think the way to achieve success is to be famous, is to be wealthy, is to be. A lot of people, when they don't get there, they feel depressed, right? They need to understand, people need to understand that success is also progressive. What is success? Is a progressive achievement of your God-given potential or your God-given purpose. It's progressive.
It's progressive.
You can always be better.
You can always be better.
And so with these 4 dimensions, you can arrive at your purpose. You can be the best.
Fantastic.
You can be while you're alive.
Okay.
And another thing I did that really helped me was I took a personality test.
Okay.
And Clarity 4D provides a personality assessment that helps people. It tells you a lot about you. You take that test and you get 21 pages about you. And those 21 pages go through the 4 dimensions. So it helps a lot of young people to understand. We've got one for youth, which they can take. And it helps them. It puts it on paper. By answering just a few questions, we're able to tell you a lot more about you than you probably new.
Fantastic. So I mean, there are tools out there.
So many tools.
So many tools. And sometimes it also helps to, if you can, have a mentor, have someone who can guide you on this journey. I think that's very, very important. So there are tools, and Clarity 4D is a fantastic tool. So the key thing is really about being intentional. Sitting down to ask yourself the tough questions, getting feedback from other people, discussing, discovering, discussing, diversifying, and developing, very, very key. So let's come back to your story at this point. So you went to resign, and obviously the madam wasn't very happy about it.
Yeah.
But you still went through with it?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did. I was able to convince her, and I told her that, look, you know what, we cannot fail.
Yeah.
Right. So fishes will not fail swimming test. So don't worry, we will not fail. And she supported me, and we went on this journey. The second part of the story is that for many years we could not have children.
Oh wow!
So we got married in the year 2000. And every month, of course, 9 months after marriage, of course, you'd expect that there would be a child. And every month, our expectations were dashed. And there was a lot of crying, a lot of pain. And but I wasn't that moved. And my wife was worried, wondering, does this man have children
somewhere else? So why were you not moved?
I wasn't moved because I had settled certain things before marriage.
Okay.
I had said to myself, I'm marrying this woman not because I want to have children, not because of, she's not a baby factory, right? There's more to marriage than having kids. I was going to marry a companion, someone that I would spend the rest of my life with, someone who will support me, that we can support each other and grow each other. And so having children was not, the key thing for me. And so I had to now do a lot of encouragement, support, and all of that. And we waited for many, many, many years. And, went through, fertility treatments and all of that. And today we've got 3 children.
Wow, that's a fantastic story. So how did you, because when you're saying many years, I want you to give us some context. How many years are we talking about?
We're talking more than 10 years.
Wow,
yes.
More than 10 years. And how did you cope? You said you had settled these things and you were able to manage it, deal with yourself because psychologically you had settled certain things.
I was prepared.
So, but we know it's not that easy for the woman.
Exactly.
Culturally, the stigma,
Yes. And that needs to end.
That definitely needs to end. Culturally, the expectations, and most times is the woman that there's always an assumption that there's something wrong with the woman.
Exactly.
And many men have gotten away with the fact that maybe they were even the issue, or maybe there wasn't really an issue with a particular person.
True.
But maybe there were certain things that, had to be done or dealt with or things like that. Yeah. So how did you help her through that journey? How were you able to deal with the fact that she probably had a lot of anxiety. She had to deal with, societal expectations. I'm sure, because we live in a culture where, when you go out, when you're an adult, you're a grown person and you're married and you go out and people say, hello, good morning, how are you? How are the children? It's almost like a default question.
A standard.
Exactly, that comes with it. And for the person who doesn't have one yet and is hoping for one, that is a reminder. That's a reminder. How did you navigate that with her?
And sometimes the person has gone through miscarriages, and that's really painful.
Wow.
So I just remained a pillar of support.
Okay.
So a lot of it was praying together,
all right.
Supporting each other. We went, of course, to a lot of programs where they spoke to waiting couples and all of that, and we put a lot of things into perspective. But I was able to help her to understand that having children was not something that was going to affect our marriage negatively.
Okay, it was not the primary purpose.
It was not the primary purpose of marriage.
Okay.
And that really settled her mind.
Okay.
Because some men would leave, they would leave and go and marry somebody else because they think the problem is from the woman. And so the good thing is that we came across this fantastic fertility company.
Okay.
Called Nordica Fertility Center.
I think I've heard of them.
Yeah, Nordica, we worked with Nordica and they really, really helped us, supported us through the journey.
Okay.
And we did our fertility treatments there.
Okay.
And were successful.
Wow.
Of course, we had a couple of failed cycles, but that's part of the journey.
Part of the
so
journey,
if there's anybody going through that, it's part of the journey.
Wow.
You just keep trying because even without fertility treatment, just having intercourse generally as a couple, it's still trial and error. You understand? It's still trial and error. You never know exactly when. So. But the fertility treatment makes it a lot easier for couples going through it.
And it's intentional.
Intentional. You've got to do it as part of the process. There's certain things you have to do, and we went through all of that. And today, we're really happy.
Kids. That's amazing.
And in fact, interestingly, my wife got a call from Nordica recently, and the lady was asking us if we would like to come back and have more children. I said, no way, not anymore.
Not anymore.
So it was tough, but being intentional was part of the deal for us.
Fantastic. All right, so let's go back to. I mean, you've had a lot of situations that you've had to face and rise above. I'm sure our audience is loving this. So I want us to go back to after resigning because, we are material beings and we need material things to sustain ourselves. Correct. And I know that, especially as a family man, it's not easy to resign. I mean, I talk about it's easier for a single person to step away from a job. They'll be able to patch through. But once you're a family man, in the African society, having a job as a man is part of being seen as responsible and things like that. But now, so between that period where you resigned and when things began to happen for you, I want you to take us through that journey because I'm sure that in our audience we have young people who want to be able to take some of these very bold steps, and I think that these steps have to be taken with a lot of conviction. That's number one, and I also think that there has to be some common sense guide to it, because some people wonder and say, okay, so if I leave what I'm doing, or what where do I start from? Can I stay where I am and begin to take courses in that are geared towards becoming better in this area? How do I make that transition? So I'd like you to share with us how you moved from resigning from Microsoft to becoming the Victor that is sitting here today.
So thank you so much for that question. So when I left, I had no savings.
Wow.
I had virtually nothing in my bank account. And because sometimes, you make a lot of money, but you spend it all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
At the point, I had almost 6 cars in my company.
I mean, you had surgeries. You just see her.
And interestingly, the car that was stolen was a leased car. I was paying the lease. I had paid for about 2 years or so. And even though the car was gone, by the time I got back to the office, I was told that my insurance had just expired, and I had to pay for the lost car.
Are you serious?
To the insurance to the leasing company. So I had to pay back. So it was a very rough time.
So that means you had to be so convinced for you to resign at that time.
At that time, I was fully convinced.
Wow.
I had nothing on ground. I had no business plan. I had no business name. I didn't know what it was to run a business. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So that's why I tell a lot of young people, they're very lucky today. They have so many things that can support them, so many resources, so many tools. Ideally, you should create a business plan. You should have a mentor. You should have a business coach. You should have someone who would help you through the whole process and all of that. All of those are great, but I'm saying, for someone who didn't even have a business plan, who didn't know exactly how it was going to happen,
Yeah.
I stepped out and I did what I felt I was called to do. And the good thing is, with my skill and my experience in that area, I started to get jobs. I started getting invitations to speak at seminars. I started to get invitations to train organizations and people like that. And one of the things that helped me was I started to run some seminars on my own.
Okay.
So I would print flyers and I would invite people. I would go around the streets. I would distribute the flyers. And interestingly, one of the seminars I ran, after printing thousands of flyers, renting a hall,
Okay.
I was expecting hundreds of people.
Wow.
On the day of the seminar, guess what? I had 2 people.
Wow.
Two participants.
Interesting.
And honestly, I spoke at that seminar like there were 5,000 people. And when we finished, one of the participants, who was my neighbor,
Okay.
and interestingly was a pastor, walked up to me and said to me, "Victor, don't be discouraged. This is just the beginning. Forget that people didn't come. You will go places." And he encouraged me. One of the things that also reminded me, that helped me, while I was delivering a training one day, one of my managers and one of my favorite people today, Choma Weke now, at the end of the training, she walked up to me. She probably doesn't remember this. She walked up to me, poked a finger in my chest, and said, "Victor, you're one of the best trainers I've ever seen." And after she left, I had tears in my eyes. I was like, okay, so I've got something here.
There's something here.
I've got something. So it's important for young people to understand.
Yeah.
You have to have something. You don't come to the marketplace with
Empty
nothing.
or-
You don't come empty.
Yeah.
You have to have something.
Yeah.
So your job is to discover that something, create a system around it, get people to support you, get people to help you, build a business plan, and just have faith.
So in those moments where not much was happening, you were making efforts but not much was happening. Those little, I think there was validation coming from some of those people who were saying, "There's something here. There's something here," and and that pushed you. That took you. Oh, that's amazing.
Absolutely.
So my next question will be: How do you stay motivated when things get tough?
So I reach inwards. So it's very important for people to be in tune with themselves. I reach inwards. I practice something called self-talk.
Okay.
Okay? I look at myself in the mirror and I speak to myself. I encourage myself. I tell myself, it's not that bad. It will be better. When things happen, sometimes I say to myself, like when a customer doesn't give me a deal, I say to myself, it's not me.
Okay.
Right? It's not about me. It's the job. So I don't feel rejected. Some people feel rejected.
Yeah.
So I try not to allow those things get to me personally. I encourage myself. I pray and have the support of people around me. I serve. So at church, for example, at this present house, I'm one of the junior church teachers.
Oh, wow.
So
Fantastic.
you have a community of people around you. I'm a member of the LDNI, Learning and Development Network International. I have a community of professionals around me. I've got I've got other people. So when you have a lot of people around you like that, you can get support.
You can draw strength
From
that community.
And draw strength from the community.
Okay, that's fantastic. So another question will be, looking back here, what do you wish you had known earlier?
Wow, that's a very good question. I wish I had known my purpose earlier, because sometimes I tell people this and they're shocked about it. I say to myself that I wasted 7 years studying a course I probably had no business
Into your
studying. right? And it's one of the reasons why I went back to university for a master's degree in managerial psychology. Because I found out that I found more fulfillment working with people than with machines. I was good with working with machines, but I found more fulfillment working with people than with machines. So I wish I had known my purpose earlier. And I tell people, you need to know your purpose before you go to school, before you go to university. Study a course in line with your purpose. You need to know your purpose before you get married, because some people will marry destiny killers. Do you get what I mean? Yeah. All right. Some people will marry people that have no bearing with their destiny, with
that
their
have
calling.
nothing to add. You know, I was on Val's Day. I was speaking at a youth event not far from here, and the first thing I said to the young people is, see, whether you make heaven can depend on who you marry. And I said, whether you are successful in life or not can depend on who you marry. That's how correct. So it's important to discover yourself first. I mean, I like to use this analogy. I have this little analogy I share sometimes in my classes. So in the late 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, we saw this a lot in sub-Saharan African countries where there were a lot of coup d'etats. Yeah. And this is what will happen. So a junior soldier in the barracks sees this Ewagoin seller, that looks very beautiful in her wrapper. And he's buying beans. He starts, asking her out. And then he eventually gets her pregnant. And then he marries her. He's a good man, so he does the noble thing. He marries her. And then 5 years down the line, there is a coup d'etat. And this guy stumbles on the presidency.
Thank you.
And then he now finds out that this is seller. Exactly. She can't address the people. She knows absolutely. In fact, she's terrified of the presidential house. She has not seen anything. She's blown away. And he then is now forced to go and marry another woman who suits what he has become.
Yes.
And the question is, why did he marry that bean seller? I'm sorry for those of you that know.
Not that there's anything wrong with selling
exactly.
But I love Ewagoin.
Yes, we
don't
love.
Joke with my Ewagoin.
So there's nothing. So please, we're not saying there's anything wrong. We're just saying that there's a mismatch, and we're saying that why did he marry someone that clearly couldn't contribute much to who he eventually became?
Yeah.
And the answer to that, is the fact that he never saw himself becoming that person. There was no plan. There was no intention.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, when we hear about people getting divorced, it's not because people are bad, but you just get to a certain point in life where you find out that we're struggling. Yeah. We're a total mismatch. We're not, nothing is aligning. Nothing is working. As a matter of fact, we might even be drawing each other back. Maybe one person is drawing the other person back. Yeah. And that's why Victor is saying here that, look, discovering purpose, gaining clarity, knowing who you are, getting a glimpse into your future and where you're going is absolutely important.
It gives you visibility.
It helps you make better decisions, better choices, about where you're going.
So here's the thing. You, like we said earlier, you may not see the end of the journey.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have an idea.
Yes.
Of the direction you're going. And that helps you to take certain decisions.
Yeah.
It will help you to decide where to work.
Yes.
What kind of career you should lead, who you should marry, where you should live. So many different, fundamental decisions that could shape your life.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Now, looking at your entire journey to this point, what's the most important lesson you've learned so far, in everything?
So the most important lesson for me is belief. And it's very related to something called the law of attraction.
Yeah.
Is to have that belief in yourself, in what you want to do, that, you will not fail. You will get it right. No matter how tough it is, we will get to the other side.
Yeah.
That belief is important because I go back to when I was on the floor in that bush, in the pool of my own blood. I just had this belief that I will not die. And that kept me alive. Some people, if they just sight the gun,
Yeah.
eh,
Yeah.
they'll give up. Some people,
They've
out
died
of fear, they will
in
die
their minds.
before they are shot. Before the bullet
Yeah,
touches them,
yeah,
they
they're
will
already
die.
dead.
They will just fall and die. You know, like the old Nollywood movies, movies where you shoot someone, the person say,
Yeah.
you have shot me.
Yeah.
I have died.
I can imagine.
You know, yeah.
I can imagine. Wow, that's quite interesting. Now, there are a couple of things you've said here today that go against conventional wisdom that I really like. When you talked about what we consider to be weaknesses, for instance, as nothing but untapped potential, that's against conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
We just see ourselves as, oh, this is a strength, this is a weakness. But then we've learned from you today that, look, what we call weaknesses are not really weaknesses.
they're not really
Sometimes they're
weaknesses.
untapped, strengths,
Yeah,
potential. Sometimes they're overused.
Overused, yes.
Strengths
Some
and
people have
things
strengths
like
and they
that.
overuse
Exactly.
them. It's all a perception.
It's about perception. So my question is that, is there any other, idea, or is there any other thoughts that you have, any other piece of wisdom that you have gained on your journey that goes against conventional wisdom? Is there any other thing?
So, it's very much like what I learned about the bumblebee. And I learned this from Les Brown. He talked about this, that, the bumblebee is not supposed to fly. And I mean, there are different discussions around that.
Yeah.
But what I learned about it was an illustration that I learned a lot from. And it said the bumblebee has such small wings that ordinarily those wings are not supposed to be able to carry the bumblebee.
Okay.
He said, but the bumblebee flies.
Wow.
And why does the bumblebee fly? The bumblebee doesn't know that he's not supposed to be able to fly.
Nobody told him.
Nobody told him that you're not supposed to be able to fly. So guess what? The bumblebee flies regardless.
That's a powerful
So
one.
don't let anyone tell you what you cannot do. You have to have a belief in yourself, in what you can do. And just do it. Just do it. I saw that as I was walking in.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yes.
It's right here in the studio. Just do it.
Yeah.
You never can tell.
never
You
can
will
tell.
succeed beyond your wildest imaginations.
Wow. That's fantastic.
And so self-limiting beliefs would really is one of the things that destroys people.
Yeah, but-
Self-limiting beliefs.
So how do people deal? Because again, I've been in, I've spoken with people that from their childhood, some of these things start from childhood, things they were told. I think the much older generation around here didn't know the importance of saying positive things to their kids. So people have grown up hearing you're stupid, you're mad, you're not good enough, exactly. And over time, what you hear, the same way physical food forms the body, information forms the spirit. What we hear will form something. So how do people unlearn all of that? How do they undo that programming?
Now, that's really tough. Okay, for a lot of people, they can't even undo those programming by themselves.
Yeah.
They need to get a coach.
A therapist.
They need to get a therapist. They need to talk to someone who understands how to unlock some of those things that have been locked inside their heads.
I agree.
So all of those things create programming in our minds, and we can deprogram. We can deprogram. Even terrorists can be deprogrammed.
Yeah.
So we can actually do that. But people have to understand that, first of all, what I used to hear was not the truth.
Yeah.
And once you come to that realization, it's a lot easier. Interestingly, some people still believe that that's how to raise children, right? By shouting at them, by insulting them, calling them names and all of them. I mean, the name you call something is what it becomes.
It's
So we have to be very careful about that. So people have to come to that realization that I've been hearing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I was raised a certain way, which is not helping me. I need to change course.
So that's awareness again.
Awareness is at the root of it.
Awareness.
I need to find someone. And I don't know why a lot of young people are afraid of talking to someone. There's nothing wrong with it.
So again, I want to say something about that. I also think that it's the nature of our culture where even when they do get to someone, So we're talking about talking to a therapist, which I think is very important. I always advise that there are things you face psychologically that you need to talk to a therapist. You need to see a professional. But that's the issue. Now, number one, around here, most people will go to the pastor or you go to your religious leader. And they're amazing people. Our religious leaders are amazing, but sometimes they are not trained for
They're
that.
not trained for
all
those
right?
things, yes.
So we need to separate the spiritual from the psychological. Not everything that is psychological is spiritual. Sometimes you need to talk to a professional. So that's number one. Number two is the fact that, to be honest, one of the problems with our society is that most of the people that studied psychology are working in the bank.
Thank you. They're
working in the bank. So the few ones that practice are quite expensive. But I think it's necessary. I think that it's important to get help. I also think, in addition to what Victor has said, is that you need new information. So you've listened to a lot of information that has gotten you to a certain point.
Yeah.
And you're going to need a different type of information to counter what you've been hearing. So you need to expose yourself to new knowledge, to new insights. You need to begin to listen to people that are saying very different things from the things that you have been used to. That would also help on the journey. I think that would help.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was Stephen Covey who said that you cannot talk yourself out of a problem you have behaved yourself into. So if a behavior took you somewhere, you need a different behavior to take you out of it. So people have to learn that they need to change behavior. And a lot of times behavior, you can't change it by yourself. You've got to talk to someone who can help you.
Yes.
Sometimes you will falter. It's like breaking a habit.
Yeah.
Sometimes you will falter, you go back to it.
It's a journey.
It's a journey. It's a journey. But it's important to start on that journey.
And be committed to it.
And be committed to
agree.
it.
I totally
This is
agree.
very, very important.
Yeah.
And a lot of older people also need to make themselves available to help the younger generation. So many of us are so concerned about making money. We're just running all over the place looking for how to make money. We forget that we're leaving a generation behind. What would their lives be like? So we need to, it's one of the reasons why I really value this podcast that you're doing on this journey. It will help a lot of people, so that we give people valuable information that can change the course of their lives.
Fantastic. This has been very enlightening even for me. I think this has been rich. And, Victor is here because, to be honest, these are questions we get, as people that are in the knowledge space. We meet young people every day. And I've always said that a lot of young people around here don't have mentors. They don't have, positive role models, or they're not intentional about even finding mentors. And I think, as a young person in a society like this, you need that direction. So, we've learned so much. Victor, how can our listeners connect with you if they want to connect with you?
Very easily. You'll find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Just search for Victor Diali. It's Diali.
Okay.
I'm also on Instagram. I'm on X. Just connect with me on all platforms.
Fantastic.
It'll be really nice. And I'd like to offer a free personality test.
Wow.
To the first 10 people who will respond.
Wow, that's
so
amazing.
if they send you a message, I need a personality test.
Okay.
Young person, will give them a free personality test. Take the assessment, and they'll get to know a lot more about themselves.
Fantastic. So if you want to be one of those 10 people, please, you have to quickly comment. I would want to take the personality test. So the first 10 people to put that in the comment section will be chosen. And I would really want to thank Victor for that. That's very, very kind of you. So please, we'll put Victor's handles, across the screen so that you can connect with him. Thank you very much. So do you have any final words of encouragement, any final words for anyone?
Well, so final words, just start the journey. And find your purpose, spend more time with yourself, and guess what? You will succeed. Trust me, you will succeed. Have this belief in yourself that you will surely succeed. And success is a lot easier because success is progressive. It's a progressive achievement of your God-given purpose. Discover your purpose, Start working on it. You're successful.
Thank you very much. That was amazing. I'm sure you guys have had an amazing time. I've had an amazing time. I'm sure Victor has too.
I have, really.
That's great. So, guys, please, if you're not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe, be part of what is happening. This is not just a podcast. It's a movement of intentional people. That's what we call it. So please subscribe. I'd like to see your comments in the comment section. I'd like to engage with you. You can follow Victor. You can follow me. And every week we're committed to bringing this amazing episode. So once again, Victor, thank you for coming to our podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure being here.
All right. So till we see you again, be intentional. Stay intentional. Bye.